I know you're funky, slow down, till the no good, funky knuckle groove. Baby, 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 that'll help for you. Yeah, it's most definitely on the roof.
Peter Shapiro, Dan Parise, Amy Spishock, Danny Clinch. Come on, I mean, seriously, please. Freaking awesome. Hey, before we start, it would be a dereliction of duty if I did not point out that today is May 8th, 2018, the 41st anniversary of the Grateful Dead's finest performance, many would say, in Cornell, New York. Ithaca, New York. Cornell University, Barton Hall. What a show, right? Okay. Hey, you know, one other thing I was thinking about, too, relative to this panel and these people, and these are all remarkable people with really distinguished careers, is that we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. But I would contend that anyone who works as a freelancer, anyone who gets a 1099 at the end of the year is an entrepreneur. And I think anything that they say here is going to be relevant to what any of you out there, or myself, does here and there. And beyond that, one other anniversary. So it was 10 years ago yesterday, May 7th, 2008, that the Jammies had its final bow at theater in Madison Square Garden.
Amy was not there.
And three of the people on this panel had a major role in that. So I think it's insane not to point that out. Of course, Peter and I, we cooked that up together starting at Irving Plaza in 2000. Danny started shooting, I think, when we moved to Roseland for the second or third year. And then in 2008, for the final Jammies, when we reunited Fish, Danny was the one who gave out the Lifetime Achievement Award to them. It was awesome. And finally, by the time, so the Jammies was a progression. We moved from, we can just talk about the Jammies, that'd be fun. We moved from Irving Plaza to Roseland to the theater at Madison Square Garden.
Twice at Madison Square Garden, twice, I think.
No, more than that.
More than that.
Three times?
And Dan was the man who put all that. He ran production. Like, I can't even imagine I can't imagine I was there. It was extraordinary because there were so many pieces. It was herding cats. It was awesome. We never could have done it but for what Dan Parise.
You couldn't do it today because those bands now have been asked to do too many favors. No, it's true, but we were early. It was 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's before the era of all the benefits and everything, and every band now has been asked to do everything. But we got in early, and we got Danny to help us, both Dannys. But this guy, Parise, you wouldn't even be allowed to do it now, probably, to help us.
I'm curious on this one, just on you. Do you have like an entrepreneurial takeaway? Do you have a takeaway that you? Because remember, this is during the time, right, at the end of Wetlands, but before Brooklyn Bowl, before the Cap. Sort of the lost decade.
Yeah, it was. I was working out of my house. Didn't have the hundreds of employees, so I had the ability to work on something that was purely dream, passion, and didn't have to think of the economic realities as much. And the bands helped too. I mean, I really do think back then we got a lot of bands and musicians to come do this gig for no fee and minimal expenses. And now when I'm involved in things, charitable things, because they've all done it so much, the expense budget is a lot bigger now. I don't think we could pull it off. And now Danny's got a big part of a big company, so I don't know if you could have helped me like you did.
Anytime. I'll do that gig anytime. One of my favorites.
But it was an important part of getting here in a way.
Fair enough. All right. Amy, hi. How are you?
Hi.
So you, you're the co-founder and the co-owner of Fort William Artist Management, you began, right, you were at Interscope, working in international marketing. Then you jumped from there, joined Zeitgeist Artist Management, and then you came on and started, you co-founded Fort William, where you work with the War on Drugs, Grizzly Bear, Beirut. Can you talk about what that was like in terms of taking that initiative, what your thought process was, and just walk us through it.
Sure. Are there ladies in the audience? I can't see anyone. Yes. Yes, there are many of us. I am in my 40s now. When I was a young woman, I went to work at a major record label and did amazing work there. Obviously, Eminem, Dre, Blink, Weezer, Gwen Stefani, all that stuff. And at about 28, realized I wasn't being paid well at all. And I quit. And I decided to become a manager with nothing, no money. And the first band I signed 11 years ago was a band called Grizzly Bear, who lived in this neighborhood. And I loved them so much. And they were totally the band that I loved always when I was working all the big pop stuff. I was always just in love with my type of music that I knew one day would be popular, and it wasn't at that time. So so I signed that band and started working hard. And then about 9 years ago, I signed a band called The War on Drugs. No one had heard of them, and we just won the Grammy for Best Rock Album. And and about 8 years ago, I signed a band called Beirut, but they were already Beirut, so I don't take credit for that. And that's my little empire, and worked hard. I'm a woman that owns a business, and most of the employees are women. And yes, and we keep it independent. We're not selling. We are the little guy, but we have big bands that really believe in our team, and they all have actually female agents, female lawyers, like probably because they have a female manager, they have a female team, and it works. We're doing great, and we're not owned by the bigger management companies.
Just in terms of the size, sometimes it can be a challenge to stay small. Like the impulse is to expand and just take on any number.
Women don't have egos like that. I make my small amount of money that I'm very grateful for. I'm a mother. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's awesome. And I get to mother her, and I get to, I'm traveling around the world with drugs currently. I'm in from Atlanta, out to Spain soon, and it's great. But I don't try to be everywhere all the time, have every band, be at every show. Like, I don't try to do that.
Fair enough. Well, I want to come back to some of that.
That's a good thing.
Good for you. Danny.
You don't hear that a lot. That's why it was awesome.
Yeah, it's very centered in many respects. So, Danny, let's talk about. I think people would be interested in either the point when you decided to go out. You very famously worked for Andy Leibovitz. As an intern, when you went out and decided either number one, sort of hang up your own shingle. This is Danny Clinch, by the way, who's an amazing, right? I mean, Springsteen, Johnny Cash. I mean, just think of all the Fish, like so many Pearl Jam, so many iconic images that he's taken. And beyond that, he has built a career as a filmmaker, starting with the Ben Harper film in 2002, on through a lot of other things, Foo Fighters, Pearl Jam a couple of times. So I'd love to hear, I think people would be interested to hear either number one, what the challenge was like to jump into film, maybe from there, or just from the get-go, how, what your experience was like deciding, okay, this is the moment, I want to get started and begin something.
Well, I was not one to make a plan. I was really passionate about photography and music, and I think that was my ace in the hole, was that it was something I was really passionate about. And I try to tell my kids that, find something you really love and, follow that, because you're willing to put the time in, you're willing to put the hours in. I was relentless on my pursuit of photography and music. So it started there. And I guess, I was able to, build a small business a little bit at a time. I think business is about relationships. And that's what was really important to me coming along is, someone mentioned to me, to treat everyone kindly, because not only because it's the right thing to do, but because that person who's answering the phones at this particular business will be handing out assignments for you down the line. And so I always just felt like, hard work was the way to go. And I was also lucky to have a strong woman on my side, as we were discussing the importance of that. My wife, at the time, my girlfriend, understood that my job required a lot of traveling and just a lot of putting a lot of time in late at night and sleeping late in the morning. And then I guess when I decided to transfer into film, I just felt like it was the way to go for me. A lot of the photographers I really admired growing up, like Robert Frank and Danny Lyon, had made films. They made documentary films, sometimes on musicians, as Robert Frank did with the Rolling Stones, and sometimes for social issues, as Danny Lyon had done. And it was, I didn't go to film school. I just picked up a camera and decided to think about making films. And I met Ben Harper. I was photographing him for a guitar magazine at the time. And I was like looking for a project that I could sink my teeth into. And I met Ben, and we were out at his grandparents' store in Claremont, California, which is like a museum. I mean, his grandfather was a luthier and made instruments. His mother is a musician. He grew up in a household where, Taj Mahal would be sleeping on the couch. They'd get up in the morning and have breakfast and have a jam type thing. And I was like, wow, this guy, he's going to be making music. This is what he's made to do, make music, and he's going to do it for a long time. So I jumped on that opportunity and made that my first film.
What was that like in terms of, in many respects, solely relying on yourself and then having to jump in and start working with the team? Do you have any recollections of any?
I mean, I'm from the DIY type mindset where you go out there and you do it. You just get it done. And it was myself and my assistant at the time, Gary Ashley, who was a lover of photography and music. And I put a camera in his hand. I took one myself, and we just went out on the road with Ben, and we went and visited, the store with him. We went on tour, and it became like a really interesting project. About halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, I decided on an editor that I was going to use, and it was this woman named Sam Lee, and I had never really sat in an edit room. I wasn't sure what the experience was going to be like, and we got in there, and she was like looking at the footage, and she said, the first thing you have to learn, Danny, is you're not taking a still photograph. You got to hold the camera steady and let the action happen within it instead of trying to make the action happen with the camera, because all my footage was like this, and I felt fortunate that at that time someone had given me that tip so that I didn't ruin the rest of the film. So it was a challenge, and it was just trying to learn, and I think to bring that to the modern times as a young photographer, if there's any photographers out there or filmmakers that are out there, and people are always they're always hitting me up about like, well, it was easier then, or was it harder then, or it's like at the end of the day, it's no easier or harder. It's just who's going to get out there and hustle, and I feel like so much opportunity today to not only photograph, but to learn how to film using any of the millions of digital cameras that are at your fingertips, So, and if someone's looking to you as an image maker, you can offer them, filmmaking as well as photography, and I think that's a huge asset, and that's something that people can do. And then also with Instagram, people are getting jobs off of Instagram. I mean, young kids are getting scooped up by huge brands or magazines to just by what they see on Instagram. So it's a whole new model.
And it seems like that's not weird to you. Like, do you actually think that's kind of interesting and cool? Is that fair to say? Like,
yeah, I feel like as a visual person and as a photographer and filmmaker, like if I walk down the street, I could walk down the street in New York City, and it's just so enjoyable to me, or wherever I am. It doesn't have to be New York. It can be anywhere. Like, and just the fact that I appreciate seeing beautiful light and shadow and color and all those things. And I always felt bad, perhaps for the people who didn't, appreciate that stuff. And I feel like Instagram, at the very least, has encouraged people to look a little harder at things and to notice things that they wouldn't notice maybe before the gram, So if you find yourself looking at things a little differently because of that, I think it's a positive.
Fair enough. Dan, hi. How are you,
Are
sir?
we going to talk about the jammies or?
Nah.
No, we're done talking about the jammies. All right.
We're past that, even though I would love to. But right, you were here in New York City working production. Eventually, you were vice president at Live Nation. Before that, you were there like SFX, Clear Channel, and then eventually
John Shear. Before that, John Shear. Yeah, I think most of my adult life I worked for promoters. So this goes way back to the '80s, of course, and Jimmy Koplik, John Shear, and of course Ron Delsner, Mitch Slater. And I think just not to take everybody's time because we can talk about that for a long time, but I think what the change that got me into my own business was the fact that, during all those years working for promoters, it was always about selling tickets. It was always about, the expenses versus the revenue. And in my later days with Live Nation, we started doing all these special events. And it wasn't about keeping our expenses low and raising money. It was like, here's a fee, go out and do a show. So that was one of, I think, the important factors that intrigued me into starting a new business. And, and that was, all those years as being a production guy, and I still am, like you guys, the greatest production guy. I start finding myself producing shows. So, it was an opportunity for me to do these events and become a producer. So that was what really, I think, got me going in the direction of starting Diversified Production Services. We're in our 8th year, and we do about 150 events a year. So it's been a great ride. I have a great staff, so that's one of the keys, I think, to my success. And we've worked together for many, many years. What I always say is, you'll go into a project, and we not only can produce that, but I have accountants, I have stage managers and talent department, and we've been together for many, many years.
What are some of the shows you've done? Tell people.
Some of my favorite ones, of course. 9/11 is always one of my highlights of my career. Concert for New York, that was the 9/11 show. 12/12/12 was great. Many years now, I think we're on our 7th or 8th year of the Global Citizens in Central Park, which has been great. And of course, all my years with the Dead. So, there's a couple of great ones in there that I'll never forget. Highgate, Vermont, always comes to mind. And, that was kind of I think, Robbie Taylor was really key to bring me in and understand production. That was like the late 80s, and I think Robbie was key to teaching me that there was more about it than just the promoter end of things. So, yeah, it's been fun.
In terms of your initial team, because unlike Danny or Amy, I mean, you had from the get-go, you had a big team of folks in order to get things rolling. Can you talk about what that was like, assembling them and?
Well, I'm very fortunate. There's some folks on my team that, Dave Myers, 25 years together. Hans Poleman, 20 years together. Cheryl Apper, Carly Vaknin, Chris Coven, we're 10 years. So, I think that's a key to the success of being able to work every day with the same people and know each other and and grow together as we all did. So, yeah.
I mean, by the way, he didn't even like Papal Mass at Madison Square Garden, Jay-Z and Beyonce. The range of stuff that you've done is actually pretty amazing for what it's worth. Peter Shapiro, how are you, sir? So
listening to this stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So let's hear your perspective. How about on this place, on the transition during that decade in the aughts when you decided to open up Brooklyn Bowl, and really, I think, sort of test yourself in a new way because you had never done this sort of build. What were some of your challenges?
There's a different. The first venue I had, the great venue, Wetlands, was different because I took over an existing venue. Wetlands was a great place. Actually, I said this place. It was built by someone, with my partner Charlie, who had a shitty rock club, a beloved, great shitty rock club. But just in terms of like knowing what we wanted to do, you know, we knew Wetlands had tough air. When it was you can feel the air now. Like we have good air conditioning here, pretty good. We had no food at the other place, so we went to the Blue Ribbon guys. We wanted to do that, just have it. We wanted to have great sight lines, but we also wanted to create a village like Wetlands, and we talked about it earlier for a minute. Like it had so many different areas, and that was part of the magic is you could go to a different area and spend time and hang out and talk and be with someone. Not like God bless Bowery Ballroom, God bless Irving Plot, but they're perfect venues. You just watch the show. Music Hall Volumes are a great venue, but you just watch the show and usually leave. You know, these Wetlands had like pockets. And so we wanted to build a place here with great sightlines if you wanted to watch the show, center on the floor, but it had different areas. And obviously it's got these bowling lanes, but my background a lot was film, and a lot of this place is the screens are about 100, most people here is probably about 150 feet from your eye, and they're 100 feet wide. And a lot of the effect of this place is the screens, and during a show it's the live show like we're seeing there, and like at Irving or Webster Hall, we're just using New York venues, the screen is usually just like 20 feet from your eye. I mean, Danny's visual. And the ability to have it be 150 by 100 feet is really powerful. And my background was doing IMAX films. And you couldn't have that geometry of being that far without the lanes. If that was empty there, it wouldn't work. And so a lot of it is about that. And the bowling, we just thought with great sound that you would, during a band show, we're not going to do solo acoustic music here ever. It won't work. But like rock and roll, like it's not close. It just, you don't hear it at all. And we thought it would just be fun. More New Orleans, late night, jazz fest, and that's what we do a lot of here. We didn't expect... We wanted to continue that energy of Wetlands. We didn't expect that we would do Adele, Kanye, Paul Simon, Jane's Addiction, Guns N' Roses, all that shit. You know, we've Quest level 300 times here. We didn't really plan that. But we wanted to create, like in a casino, where you forget, there's no windows really, there's no clocks, and it's a lot of multi-sensory things going on. And I did that really, we did that because there was already Bowery Ballroom in Irving Plaza. There were a couple of great venues in New York already. So we were kind of like, and Wetlands, didn't think we could recreate Wetlands. It's a unique space. You just couldn't, you'd only fuck it up. And it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay, right? Well, to that end, though, can you
I'll tell you one thing. This is relevant. You know why it worked out? Because most venues are a stage facing a bar anywhere in America. Great venues. What we're able to do here with service and taking care of people, we're only able to do because of those things in the restaurant. Because then we have more staff. There's more money that we can, the tip money, that the staff, that we can have more staff and take care of people in a way they don't get taken care of in a traditional venue. We can pay bands better than the other venues. All the bands here get 100% of the merch. Most places you play probably don't do that. We're able to do that because of the other things going on. And this is a quick story. When we opened, we paid bands pretty much like 100% of the door. And people would be like, you can't, you know, why? In most music venues that don't have the other stuff, bowling and food going, they need to keep like 30-40% of the door to pay security, pay production. So they had to charge to see a band $25, you know, so that they could get 10 and a band would get $15. We would be just charging 15 at the door for the same band. At $15, people come up and they walk up and what's going on? $15, I'm in. At 25 at Irving, at 25 at Bowery, no one walks up and just buys a ticket. You're not gonna just walk in at 25, it's too much. 15, you'll just walk up. And we were willing to give all that pretty much to the band. So people would be like, why, you can't do that. But we flipped it on them and said, well, we have the biggest kind of, if you looked at it differently, not as a music venue, but as a restaurant bar thing, we have more seats here. If these are all 8, 10 seats each, 16 lanes, the restaurant that, we're filling like the biggest restaurant in New York and having a band like Galactic or Soul Life for free. We're giving them the door. Any restaurateur would take that all day long. A music venue couldn't do that. And when you get walk up and Amy's a manager, like if you're $25 at Irving or Bowery, you're getting no walk up. Everyone who's buying a ticket is buying it in advance, has probably seen the band before. What you want as a manager, we found on a Friday, Saturday night, we're walking up for half the place. So at Irving or Bowery, if they do 500, we could do like 800, 900. It's a lot of walk up. The walk up people haven't seen the band before. So as a manager, you're playing, or the band, in front of a half an audience who's never seen you before. And you're turning people on, then to new people, versus the other places you're not. And that was a big part of what worked here. Bands getting to play, make the same money as Irving or Bowery, but get new people to come see them. Play for $15, not 25. Make the same money and have new people. And that was a big part of kind of, if you could follow all that, that's what happened.
Well, in terms of development, Amy, back to you. I was just, can you talk about, one of the challenges, I think, with any business in particular is there comes a moment when you have to say no to something that would have been like an opportunity that would have been amazing, that you would have been just so thrilled for either for you or for your artist or whatever earlier in either your career or the artist's career. And then you have to say, well, can you talk a little bit about what that experience has been like?
Sure. Does anyone in the audience want to be a manager at some point? Is there anyone here? No, it's all live.
No, there's people. They're raising
Just trying to figure out how to, no.
They're raising
Anybody
hands.
wanna be a manager?
There's manager.
Is there
Can't
Q&A
see.
at any point
Yes.
where we can ask them what they want to
Yeah,
know?
they're out there.
That's what I want to talk to you about, is what you want to know, not just talk at you. But sure,
Is there something?
you manage a band and they start to do well, right? And then the next port of call is, let's do well everywhere in the world, which is exactly what they should think and should try for. Global careers are the ones that work. I think everyone knows that now, but coming from an international background, I knew that. But for indie bands out of Brooklyn, they did not know that 11 years ago. And I was always really adamant about it. But I remember, just to give a specific example, when Grizzly Bear started to break off of a record called Vekatimist, it had a song called 2 Weeks on it, and it was the song that really meant something to people. Australia kept calling. Promoters from Australia calling. Bring the band down. And I said, they can go when it breaks even. I'm not trying to make money. I definitely see the benefit in going, playing for the fans, building something, starting something, but we can't go if we lose money. They can go when it makes money. And we just stuck to that. And we didn't end up going until a year after the album had come out, even though they were like saying it has to happen right when it comes out. We ended up touring where we could do somewhat well and went when the offer was enough that we could break even.
What size venues was that?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think we went and did Falls Festival, and we were somewhere on that lineup. And then we did Sydney Music Festival. We combined two festivals, basically, which over there is easier to do than here. They're much more like, they all know each other and they care and they want to bring the bands down. So the festivals talk to each other and...
They don't radius you fully out. You can't play over there.
There's no radius
It's just an
clause.
American
Are you
thing.
kidding? Yeah, there's no radius clause issues down there. Well, there are, but it was very communal, and it was a very communal effort. And we went in 2010, and it was the cover of all the newspapers. It was the most fun I've ever had. It was so much fun. It was like arriving, and it was the right call to wait. It was the right call on every effort, because we went when we could afford to go, we didn't make any money going, but we didn't lose any. And it was still this wonderful thing. And I've used that with them always because they wanted to do Southeast Asia, want to go to Malaysia, Thailand. Yes, you can go when it makes money or breaks even or whatever. And it tends to be a break-even thing. South America, we've done Argentina, Peru. It's been great. Chile, it's been awesome. You don't try to make money in those markets. You try to go when you can break even and then build them. And then when they call you back, that's when you know you A, succeeded, and B, are going to make money.
I was going to ask the same person.
Did that set you up when you went to Australia for the next time around?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh yes. Now we go on every record, and it's wonderfully successful and makes money. We made more money on this past trip than we have in our career. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, the bottom line about the music industry, I always feel, is the live. I mean, that's why I'm happy to be here. It's no matter what, if rap is popular now and pop music is popular now, clearly, all over the place, these indie rock bands are still doing great because there's bodies showing up at all their shows. I mean, we're selling tickets like we always did. We're being invited to all the countries that we started to build 10 years ago. It still feels amazing. I mean, I did the same path with the drugs, building it live, and then obviously the music and the records and the record labels and all that stuff follows. But we've always done the same thing, break-even status with going into new markets, and it's been great. I mean, and we're waiting for places like India and China. They're still way too cost prohibitive to go into, so we just wait, But it'll be exciting when we can go.
Same question, though, Danny, to you. Something that at some point earlier in your career you would have been so thrilled to do, but for whatever reason, you just have to say no, or holding off in a similar context. Is there something that jumps to mind for you that you could talk about?
No, I have the opposite problem, that I was always saying yes, for better or for worse, Yeah, and probably it would have been better for me to say no to certain things, but I always tried to cram in as much as I possibly could, which is a blessing and a curse.
What do you have? I mean, I'm just curious, is there a story from saying yes one too many times that you can share?
Is that because you want to do it or because they're friends?
Well, you know what? I've always been sort of the idea that there was a little silver lining in every opportunity. So I was always trying to find hey, maybe I don't specifically need to do that job, but however, it could lead to something else. If I think of it in the music industry, it's that publicist also works with so-and-so, and the manager works with this person, and that sort of thing. So, I always felt like there was an opportunity. I could always talk myself into doing it.
Do you still? Because now you're Danny F. and Clinch. I mean, do you still think that?
I had a conversation when I walked in here earlier with someone who was like, I had wanted to work on a project and I wanted to work on it, but I physically just don't have the time, and I have to draw the line somewhere. So it's I have to weigh out, weigh it out financially. I have to weigh it out relationship-wise. I have to weigh it out I wanted to spend time with my family. I need to sleep. Some of those things.
Overrated, but
yeah.
So Dan, to you, is there something that, for whatever reason, that you had to say no to that you would have loved to have done that just didn't?
And that's my biggest problem. I never do say no. It's my staff always how can you do iHeart, Vegas, and Global Citizens the same night, and now you took another gig?
What's the answer to that?
Well, there is no answer to that. I think it's you don't want to miss the opportunity. And you feel obligated. I mean, if someone's going to call you and they trust you and they want you to produce your show, it's hard to say no. It really is. I think that's, and as we get older in life and we want more time for ourselves, that's starting to, not yet for me, but hopefully someday I'll start thinking that way. But I think that's the biggest challenge with a company. You as we went on our own. Do you start hiring a lot more people? Do you get bigger? Does it start getting too big where you have too much staff and you're taking all these events and you can't control it? I still treat every event, no matter how small it is or how big it is, always the same. You know, our passion and our hard work goes into that. So, you know, it's hard to juggle it around. It really is. But, yeah, I'm more, you know, I just keep taking them.
Peter, you want to take before we open it up to questions, you want to take a swing at that one?
No, I have the same problem. Love doing shows. And then, you know, just when a cool opportunity comes, probably when you meet a new band, when you want to go, it's hard, like you want to do it. I hope I don't lose that in a way, but I'm tired. I put on a show every night for the last 20 years, so I'm tired of the facility. But then you know what happens? I go to a show, or I'm at a show, and I'm back. I want to do another show. Usually I like going to shows not
it's
at
the
my own
passion,
venues.
Pete. It's the passion.
But it's true, right? And so I know Danny's that way. I see Danny. I know both. I mean, that's what's cool. Like, that's why we're friends.
Yeah.
I think.
I gotta say, like, I run into Pete somewhere. I'll be like at Jazz Fest, or then I'll be at Bonnaroo, and like Pete's there, and then Pete's there, and I'm like, well, I'm here, but you know, Pete's like, well, let's go out, and I'm like, well, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, well, yeah, I'm just getting on the 6 a.m. and heading back home. Like,
well, I come home for
doesn't
soccer. There's a way to do it. If you guys want to do it, no, it's a lot of red eyes. I came back from Jazz Fest and flew home and went to soccer. And that's a big, you know, you got to be able to do that, a lot of red eyes. You can do a lot if you fly west at like on a 6 a.m. flight, you can land at 9. And if you fly back on a red eye, it's true. But that's just got to be inside you. I think a lot of the people who are here, you're here. You know what? I have a good one. Good story. We had a great world music show here the other night, and a guy named Tom Freston came with Chris Blackwell. Tom Freston created MTV, basically, right? Yeah. And he's probably 65, 70 years old, I think. And it was a Sunday night. And it helped that Chris was here too. But he came in and we met at dinner, and he had clearly just shy. He said, yeah, well, I just landed. I flew in from LA. And this is a guy who's like started MTV. Now he's like chairman of Vice, like a guy who just doesn't need to on a Sunday night. And he had been at David Geffen's birthday the night before in LA, went the next morning, Sunday, flew here to meet us for dinner. Yeah, for Ali Farkaz's son, blanking the name. And you know what he said? I'm like, it's awesome that you're here. And we had a great time. And he goes, you know what? It's such a simple thing. But he goes, you can't be there, or you can't see it if you're not there. And this guy's like,
I think that's the animating spirit of the whole conference, right?
Right, you can't. People are here. It's true. It's such a simple thing, right? We go to things, and it's hard because you don't always want to be there, like Amy said. Like that's a thing you have to learn to let go, and you have a team. But there's not, But sometimes you have to be. You can't be there if you're not there. Like simple stuff. Our whole business. Like I have a big one. Like, and it's so obvious, but like outdoor festival, like. You got to put everything in place. You can't, the more you practice, the luckier you get. Ted Williams line. But the truth is, you got to put it in place. But the good weather, there's like shitty weather, there's okay weather, and then there's good weather. And we'll all take okay weather because the show goes on. You can have a great show. Bad weather that's a problem. Because a lot of things domino the wrong way. Things get delayed, load in when it's raining. People are anxious, aggro, waiting online. If it's rain, it's bad. It just is. You can bullshit yourself. Oh, it's going to be okay. But when you have great weather, everything starts to domino the right. People don't mind waiting online. They're happy.
Walk-ups.
What?
The walk-ups. No walk-ups in bad weather.
Well, but good, right. Walk-ups, but, the Fare Thee Well thing, the Dead thing we did, like that was in a big part. People because we got lucky, we had perfect weather, 76 degrees in Chicago. If it had been 96, because it was July 4th in Chicago, if you're humid and it's 95, it's just not the same fucking vibe. It's not. and good weather can be mad because everything dominoes the right way. But now you can't control that. You have to set it up for good, bad, or okay. We'll take okay. But I don't know how we got here, but good weather's important.
Well, by the way, we did have that Jammies year where it snowed the day of, where tickets were going, and then just flat.
Indoor show. Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. Indoor show.
Did it snow? I forgot.
Q&A. Anyone? Let's open it up to questions. Amy would love to have someone ask her a question.
I personally love it. Well, someone's got to have a question.
Come on, you manager wannabes.
Yeah.
No, anybody. For anybody. No one has questions?
I got one then. By time.
Are you all already in the jobs you want to be in, and you don't want to do anything else? Okay.
It's 2 hands.
That's a good way to put it.
This question's for Pete. What are some of the for someone who's looking to maybe start a music venue or a music festival? What are some of the things that what are the essentials that you have to have this, or it's totally going to fail?
Yeah. Well, don't pick a place with a lot of columns. We always start, first thing, it was just somebody else like, you want high ceilings and not a lot of columns. We're lucky this building just had high, we won't even get into this one, but you got to be early in a neighborhood. Like, you can't do one. If you look at the venues in Manhattan, Irving Plaza, Hammerstein, Terminal 5, God bless, the old Roseland, which is gone now, or Gramercy, or let's say Cutting Room, Blue Note, the Jazz Clubs, Village Vanguard. There's no new ones. There are no new venues. You can't find one. The new venue here in Brooklyn now, you're out at Brooklyn Steel in East Williamsburg. We're just fortunate. We found this 10 years ago now. So you have to be on the front edge, because if you want to be where it's super happening, it's too expensive. It won't work economically. So you have to kind of find a spot that's in the next neighborhood, or some unique. Your uncle owns the building, and you can get a great deal. That's just truth. But it's interesting, if you look at Manhattan, where's a new music venue in Manhattan? There isn't. Terminal 5, they're my friends, but let's be honest, Bauer, that's not a great venue. I could miss Roseland. It's just not. They're going to be upset, but it's true. But everyone plays there. You know why? There's no other 3,000 cap room in Manhattan, really. I miss Roseland. So you just got to get to the next neighborhood. I would build a team. I would work with people, collaborate with people. Don't try to do it on your own. Find people who know the city, logistical, governmental. That's a big part of it. The legal, getting zoning and all that. Find someone who's done it before. Don't try to do it yourself. Find a great spot. Don't come over there. I want to do a venue. Find the spot and then build everything a lot around that. Because if you go to someone to raise money or join your team, it's a lot better if you're like, I have a spot. And don't tell too many friends about it, or it'll be gone. But find a spot and then build it, your layout, all your stuff around the spot, and then go from there.
Dan, I'm just curious if you have thoughts on that. It's like, obviously, you've worked so many places around the city. Do you have thoughts on...
I think everybody needs to pay their dues in the business. I think that's a very important factor on your success. So, how you start off in a smaller part of the business and how you grow, it's really important. So I think the successful people in the business, and all of us up here have paid our dues. I mean, when you look at Ron Delzner selling, being a ticket taker at Forest Hills, or John Shear having his theater out in Passaic, or Michael Rapino being a Labatt's beer salesman. That's all part of, I think, the success in the business. And I think in the just like in starting out in a club or starting wherever you can, you do have to really start in a smaller and work your way up. There's only a handful out there that has had this business fall in their lap. So That's always how I've seen it, and that's I think we're surrounded with successful people that have followed that road or paid their dues.
Amy, I'm just curious, just in terms of obviously not building a venue, but in terms of paying dues, do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I always say when I speak on panels, and again, I think it's funny that I'm always the only woman, so I get asked a lot as the token woman to talk. I grew up in a really small town in Pennsylvania, and I interned, and that's it. My parents aren't in the music industry. My father's deaf, so there's no tie to family money or family connection whatsoever. I just started interning, and I think it ties back to what Pete said about if you want to start a festival or open a venue, get to know other people, get to know people that can help you. We all build this on each other's shoulders, and all of us are capable of it. It's not all people with connections. It's just not. It's just really someone with an idea that really drives the idea, but has the right support and does it in the smart way, and then these things float. It's really cool.
Amy.
Janine! Oh, this is going to be a trick question.
Oh, no, I just said, for an international career, something to balance. In general, of course, everywhere you play, every event, everyone, wants to film it, record it, do this, whatever. When you're in an album cycle, how do you determine what to participate in? How much, if you limit people too much with how they can use it, no one's going to see it, right?
We do live only for all my bands.
But and I'm not
it
even.
It can be live streamed.
I'm not even thinking that. Even when you're talking radio shows or, on-air interviews and everything you do, right? So, again, how long people can use it and how extensive they can use it. It's difficult, right?
So says the lawyer.
Yeah. not from, a rights perspective, more from a marketing perspective and, how much reach you want to get.
Yeah, I mean, my bands own as much of their rights as possible. All my bands own their publishing. Obviously, on the master side, they're all on record labels, so they don't necessarily own that, but there's revisions and they get their masters back. I believe in ownership. I think it's the best thing you can do. You look at the history of all these bands selling their publishing, their masters in perpetuity. I mean, it's a sin. And then you see people like Bruce Springsteen fighting for it back 50 years later after he's done so much work. I mean, you got to be kidding me. So I think the thing that we can learn from that is don't let people own your stuff forever. Maybe a little while, right? Maybe you're publishing never, right? Which I think had a conversation with Paul McCartney about this a couple years ago, and he totally agreed with me. So I felt justified. I was like, yes. If only we had met before I was born, I would have told you that too. But yeah, I think with rights on everything, it's important that the band owns it. I mean, they can scream promotion at you like crazy, but yeah, things should be really limited. And just to say, going into the festival season, the War on Drugs are obviously a headliner on most shows worldwide this year, which we're very blessed to be. And Grizzly Bear also on pretty much all the same ones the Drugs are on, doing really great. And we limit all the festivals to live. You can live stream it, you can live anything it, and then that's it. You can't archive it, you can't own it.
And that's fair. As the venue side, we do all we would look for is live.
Amy, you're a rock star. You're awesome for women. So my question for you, what tools did you use to really stand out in such a male-dominated field? Can you share that with us?
Can you ask the question again?
What tools did you use to stand out in such a male-dominated field as you kind of made your way? Tools. As
a manager?
Just to really
make
yourself stand out. Just as a manager, to make yourself stand out in this field. So, I mean, you've been doing it a long time.
You know what? I'll answer that this way. We were just talking, literally we met and we're being kicked on the stage, and he mentioned, I made a joke about being the only woman, as always, and he mentioned that he's doing something in Asbury Park, and he's proud to have a woman panel, right? And I said, I would never participate in that. You can put me on a panel as a woman with other peers, but never a woman-specific thing, like women in music. Are there men in music panels? I'm sorry, no, there are not.
You know, it's cool. There's more women in the
he's so
front
sweet.
here than men.
Yeah, he's trying to impress me. But no, it was very sweet. And I said, but seriously, what you should do is invite more women on your panels. Don't make specific women panels. What are you talking about? And I think, obviously, I love that women are really stepping out more and feeling more vocal about everything. But I started 11 years ago, I think is your question, right? I was at a record label working for all men, 100%. And I knew I was keeping the lights on because I was traveling the world with Eminem and Dre and Blink and coming back exhausted, gone 10 and a half months out of the year, definitely never going to have a family. And I wasn't making nothing. And they were all on yachts and da-da-da. And I just was smart about it. I don't think that is that bad now, but it was then. And I just quit and made a name for myself as a manager. But I think at least my bands really love being led by a woman. They really trust me, and they know that I'm in it for the right reasons. And like I said, I'm not out there to sign every band and make heaps of money. And I don't do deals like, yo, bro, like, let's do this deal. Like, it's not in my vocabulary. It's really about the band's individual best interests. And I also love having my own life now with my child and my family and everyone. I just took my little girl to Atlanta over the weekend to Shaky Knees, which was a really cool festival. I wanted to check it out. The Drugs were playing, and it was just really fun. It was like, just family vibes, and they're all having babies, and felt really good. But nobody's doing big deals backstage or like selling anyone down the river. So I think there's many ways that women stand out because we think about things differently. I'm not saying there aren't amazing men in the field, because there are. But as far as standing out, I would just say I consider myself a colleague. So I just do things like I would do them, hopefully intelligently and with morals and humor. And you would stand out like you would as a human, not particularly as a woman.
Well said. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Do we? They gave me the fiver, Peter. As they said, yeah.
You're talking about building businesses and kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Were there any pivot points that you found were kind of detrimental to kind of getting to where you are now? And what path did you take to make it as successful as it had become?
What's it for anybody? I think all of you should take that question.
Pivot points.
Let's start with
I'm having
Dan.
a hard time. Who's taking that
When
one?
you say, so pivot points from a negative standpoint, like mistakes that you made, or?
Right. When digital came, what'd you do?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Because anyone can be a photographer now.
Yeah. Well, I think, what was that?
Well, no one else is DC. No one else is Danny Clinch. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Well, what'd you do? Digital came and made them.
Sure. Pete takes great cell phone pictures. Not really.
I got one a minute ago. I'll be while you're like.
No, I think there's that fine line where you want to hold on to the stuff that you love. You want to hold on to film. You want to hold on to vinyl records, and things change, and you want to be the holdout because you feel like, and the record companies did it. They weren't into streaming, in the beginning, and like, there are a lot of questions as to what's better. But you have to sort of adjust with the times. So for me, just going from shooting film all the time to digital, and how resistant I was to it, and now I embrace it for a lot of reasons. It's very flexible. As a photographer who shoots a lot in back alleys and on tour buses and in dark recording studios, Digital is incredible. The low light capability of a camera these days versus shooting film is like night and day. So that's interesting. The fact if you run around and go to festivals and like I do and love to be around photographing, you're not carrying, your pockets aren't full of film and stuff. However, when I get a film shot back and I have a film camera on and a digital camera, if I get the film back, it's usually the film that I love more. So I think holding on to the traditions is important. However, embracing, the technology is, I think, foolish if you don't do that.
And I have a similar, I think, analogy, like holding on. If you want, everyone gets a fail or two, and just try to do whatever you're doing with a team, a support. That could be one other person, because it's hard to do it alone. But I would just say, like, I tell the story. We have two people who work here, and they're both in a band, and they both, their band gets a 3-month tour, and they both come up to the HR people and say, one says, I quit. My band got a tour. Thanks for everything, but I quit. I'm out. The other one comes up and says, my band got a tour, 3-month tour. I love it here, but I got to leave. But I'd love to come back one day if I can. If I come back, I'd really appreciate if I could come back here. And so those two people have the same situation. They both come back, and they both want the gig back. But one got counsel and advice from a parent. I know this, and the other didn't. Because think about it. All they did was how they left. All they did was how they described it differently. Mm-hmm. One said, I quit. The other said, I'd love to come back one day if I can. I'd love it if you'd have me back. So the person that said that, they get to come back. Yeah. And so get advice, counsel. Also a parent, that was the only difference. One just didn't talk to anyone, just said, I quit, I'm out, I got a tour. The other got advice where someone says, before you leave, tell them that you might want to come back one day. Yeah. And so the only kind of comp for anyone out there, like if you have a job and you're trying to get into live or music or management or putting on shows, don't quit. A lot of the comps are like, I'm managing a band, I'm quitting, I'm doing this and I'm quitting my normal job just to do that. If you're really sure. But if you can manage a band, put on a show, do anything while being conservative and keeping the other gig in any way or whatever that means to you, do it that way.
I think what Amy was saying also, it's about respect for people and, doing the right thing because it's, the way it should be. The fact that it will be a benefit to you down the line is just, icing on top, but it's like.
But I think also what Pete said is exactly right. Like I always tell people, don't just free fall. Like keep your job and then try to build on that and then quit, right? Yes. But the thing is, don't be scared to quit once you build that groundwork. It's like everyone thinks there's some like corporate safety net. I'm sorry, have you been paying attention? Everyone's an at-will employee. Any corporation where you think you have a stable job with benefits and 401k can fire you tomorrow. Right? For no reason. And so people get nervous and scared and they stay in these jobs. When I worked for Interscope, obviously it was a huge company. It's the #1 record label in the country at the time. Might still be, I don't know. But my parents were terrified that I left my health insurance and my 401k plan and whatever else. But I knew I had built myself enough knowledge and education, and I knew I was going to Zeitgeist with another manager that was willing to help me and teach me and bring me up. So I was making a safe bet, which I think is what Pete's saying about moving on to things. But in no way did it seem on paper smart. But it really was. I'd built my foundation and then I left and I made more money my first year than I did in corporate America. So I think that being an entrepreneur and everything you guys are hopefully here to learn about festivals and venues and doing all that kind of stuff, definitely do it. The people that do it are the ones that succeed and then everyone wonders how they did it. It's because they just did it.
You gotta go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah, you know,
Take a
to bring it all the way around to the jammies, when you get that cease and desist from Naris, say forget it. We're doing our thing.
Yeah, go fuck yourself. No. But then keep a little in your back pocket just in case. Okay.
Anyhow, how about let's hear it for these remarkable folks.